Okay, well, welcome everybody and good evening. Thank you for attending our town hall. This is the first town hall we've ever tried virtually. I think probably, uh, hang on, I need to do one thing real quick. All right, there we go. Before we get started, we are live streaming, or we are simultaneously translating this meeting in Spanish. So I need to make a quick announcement in Spanish before we get started. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Si está en un computador con Windows o Mac o un dispositivo móvil Android o iOS Apple y desea escuchar la transmisión en español de este ayuntamiento, puede acceder al idioma español haciendo clic en el icono del globo mundial al final de la página y seleccione español. Este ayuntamiento virtual se transmite en vivo en YouTube en la página de New Haven Unified School District Board. Dentro en 24 horas después del cierre de la reunión, toda la grabación del ayuntamiento estará subtitulado con traducciones en varios idiomas, incluido el español. Okay, well, thank you for putting up with my my bad Spanish. I don't speak very well. Good for me to practice, though. Anyway, as we get started here, we find ourselves, the reason for tonight, and as all of you know, we're in truly an unprecedented time in our history. And unfortunately, schools, parents, students, we're caught in the middle of all this right now. We all want to start the year with our students back in school as soon as possible, but as safely as possible. And as you know, we all know, that thought right there evokes super strong feelings, really strong feelings about, are our kids going to be safe? What does school look like? For example, I've heard from a lot of people who want us to reopen schools as much as possible, as soon as possible. And then I've heard from a lot of people that want us to wait to reopen schools until everybody's been vaccinated and be in full virtual format until then. And you know what? Both of these perspectives are valid. I get them, we get them, and we recognize these feelings. And we're in a spot right now where, and what our challenge is to find a way to open schools, or in a way, or in this case, multiple ways, that are reasonably safe and that are flexible enough to adjust to changing conditions and circumstances, which is why we're here tonight. We need your help with that. And I'd like to start by reviewing the agenda tonight, so you know exactly what we're doing and how you can share your thoughts and comments. I'm going to do that by sharing my screen. So bear with me for a minute while I do that. Hang on. Again, this Zoom format's nice, but sometimes it's takes a little bit of manipulating. Okay, so let me shift over to here. Okay, so here we are. All right, so our goal is to get through some preliminary information as quickly as possible and to leave as much time as possible for all of you to share your thoughts and comments. And we'll talk briefly about the purpose of the meeting. There's some acknowledgments I need to make and some procedures and protocols we'll talk about. We'll give a very brief overview of how we got to where we're at and our reopening process to date. We shared a lot of that last Tuesday at our board meeting. And I feel like last Tuesday was 6 months ago at this point, because since then, we've received new information. Last Thursday, we received information from the County Health Department and the Office of Ed around health and safety protocols and requirements. Since then, Monday, officially, the governor signed the state budget, and attached to that are trailer bills, which spell out some conditions related to our funding that affect our instructional models and plans for opening schools. And also, since we announced this town hall meeting, we've collected quite a few comments and questions from all of you in the community. So those are 3 bits of new information we'll touch on briefly. We'll talk briefly about our timeline and the next steps, and then we'll get right into the public comments. We're going to have a hard stop at 7 o'clock. So we want to give all of you as much time as possible to share your thoughts and concerns. So moving forward, our purpose. So ultimately, the purpose of tonight is to hear from all of you and have you give us input on what you would like to see when we're reopening schools and how we should be, what we should consider when we're developing our plans. We chose today's date because, again, last week on Tuesday, we had one set of rules thought we were following, but we knew new guidance was coming, and thankfully, it did come within this last week. So we want to share that with you, and we chose tonight's date to give you a chance to think about it or hear about these things as before you're sharing your thoughts and comments. And let's see, this information that I'm talking about is found on our website, in the same place you probably found the link to join this town hall. It's on the spotlight section, and if you go in the spotlight section of our website, you'll see a town hall meeting link. And if you go to the town hall meeting link, you'll see references toward an Alameda County public health document. You'll see a legal opinion we received around what the state budget means for us. And ultimately, you'll see this slide deck there that has links in it. And there's quite a bit of other information. There's also a survey link there, and you'll hear us reference this several times. If you don't want to share your thoughts tonight, but you want to share your comments with us, you can do that through the survey link that's on that section of the website. And also, it's possible that not everybody will get a chance to share their thoughts tonight. We've got a couple hours, and there are over 700 people, about 700 people that are joining us in this town hall. So it's just, we could go till midnight and probably not hear from everybody. So if you don't get a chance to talk, but you want to share your comments and your thoughts, you can do that through this survey link as well. Okay, so moving forward, I want to acknowledge several groups of people, and before we get started, we had, for example, over 65 teachers involved with our design teams that helped create the instructional templates we shared with the board last week. We had CSEA, NHTA, and administrators as part of an advisory group that assisted us in reviewing these instructional plans and models. We've also had hundreds of parents, students, community members, and staff members respond to our surveys. We've been surveying people, all of you, staff members, parents, since we closed our schools in March, and received literally thousands of comments over that period of time. And those comments have really been helpful in helping us inform our decisions and craft our plans. And again, tonight's another attempt for us to really hear that valuable feedback that you're providing. So on behalf of our school district and on behalf of our school board, I wholeheartedly thank all of you who have helped us to get to this point, to move this unprecedented process forward. Okay, so the next part of our agenda is procedures and protocols, but I think we're going to skip this for now and come back to it right before we go to public comment, because most of the procedures and protocols are related to how you can speak, what the parameters are, all of that stuff. So that gets us to how we got here. And again, we shared this at last Tuesday. I don't want to dwell on it because there's been a lot of talk about how we got here with our design teams and whatnot. But if you look at this framing document, you can see that we are now on the 1st of July, where we are having our town hall. And the next big moment is the 14th, where if all goes well, we'll gather information from tonight and along with using the documents with the new information we have about safety and how we need to structure our design plans. We'll use the work that was put together by our design teams, modify these plans, and if all goes well, we will share them with the board on the 14th of July. We'll be working with our labor partners continually through this process. Next week, I think we have a date or two set with NHTA, and we'll work with CSEA as well as appropriate to get their feedback. And again, that'll continue well beyond the 14th of July as we continue to revise and make our plans operational and work through the logistics. So that's kind of how we got to where we are, and also covers the timeline piece of where we're heading next. So I want to come back to this slide. We shared it Tuesday, but it's helpful, I think, for all of you to see what our guiding principles are and what we're using to inform our process. And this pyramid shows that our number one principle and priority is the health and safety of our students, staff, and families. Then the next most important piece is making sure we have the resources and funding available to actually reopen our schools. And then from there, creating quality learning plans, be they hybrid options with some in-classroom instruction, some virtual instruction, fully virtual plans, whatever they may be. That's the third level of priority, is making sure we're doing those. And then ideally doing those in a way that are flexible enough to flow between them. So maybe starting the year in the hybrid model, everything is going great, fully reopen, bring all our kids back, and then have something happen like another outbreak where we have to go back to full virtual, and being flexible enough to do that. As of Tuesday of last week, we didn't even have the information we needed then about how to address those two lower tiers of that pyramid, the two most important tiers. So all of our work to that point had been focused on this third tier, really just trying to create our plans as best we could with the information that we had. And you'll see in leading the work our design teams did, and the work that we spent creating those plans, was really focused on the idea that we want to maximize safety for students while creating these plans. And accordingly, what you see is a minimal amount of time where students are in classrooms, much more time in virtual format, because our thinking along the line was, well, we should minimize student to student contact, staff to student contact, and staff to staff contact. That was one of the guiding principles when it came to safety. Well, things have changed, and we'll get to how they've changed coming up. For example, in that second tier, how we get our funding is going to be tied to what the trailer bills that are attached to the budget include, which is a priority that we have as much in classroom time as possible. So that's completely different than how we were originally thinking when we first started moving forward. So anyway, more to come on that, but those are our principles. And here you've heard me reference the 3 documents, the joint document between the Alameda County Office of Education and our Alameda County Public Health Department. They've got guidelines. Again, you can find those under that link on our website. There's a legal opinion about what the state trailer bills mean. If you try to look at them, they're between the different trailer bills, there's hundreds of pages you have to sift through. We got a legal opinion on what that requires. And we have, if it's not there already, you'll see a summary of the parent comments and questions we've received to date. And that will be there as well. And again, the survey link is there as well. So let's get into it. So what is this new guidance information that we received? And this is the big one. I would say the biggest concerns that I've heard that have come through the surveys and that have come through the comments and questions and concerns we've received are around safety. And that's what this document is all about. So quite a few bits of information there. For example, that the county health department is going to require cloth face masks are worn. And face masks seem to be a polarizing issue. We have people who don't want face masks at all. They don't want anybody wearing them. And we have people that want everybody wearing them all the time. So, and I get that. Those are really strong, legitimate feelings about face masks. But this is guidance that we have to follow. We don't have a choice. And this document contains that kind of information. For example, it shares that home screening for COVID-related symptoms is going to be a home requirement. Parents, families, guardians are going to have to do that at home. And that burden falls on families, not on schools. So that's outlined there as well. Physical distancing, we always functioned under the premise that 6 feet is required. But actually, when you look at this document, you'll see that 6 feet is ideal, but we can create classrooms with less than 6 feet between the desks if it allows us to have more functional, larger groups. So instead of having to break a class up into 3 groups, this allows us to break a class up into 2 groups when we don't have to have the 6 feet between the desks. So that was really important information to have. And then we were not sure about if we were going to be required to have cohorts of students together. And if that's a requirement, that changes everything. This document indicates that this is an ideal scenario, but not required. So for example, they recognize that a 6-period day at the middle and high school level doesn't allow for us to reopen in any kind of functional way if we have to keep the same cohort of students together. So that, again, very helpful information. And then also, I would guess that a lot of the questions that all of you have about health and safety are the same questions that we've had. And this document contains a lot of a frequently asked questions section that has a lot of that information. As we're getting into the public comment section, you'll often hear me say, hey, that's really a legitimate concern. You can find that information by accessing this document. So again, a very important document for all of us to have. So moving forward to our budget, we in order to be able to open have to be able to um, get money from the state. And unless they had granted waivers around instructional minutes, it was going to be impossible to move forward without fully reopening our schools for 6 periods a day, that type of thing. So thankfully, we did get clarification on instructional minutes, and you'll see in the legal, in both in the actual budget and in our legal opinion, that they clarified this. So most students are going to be required to be engaged in instructional activities for 4 hours a day, slightly fewer minutes for younger students. And that could be either in full virtual format, in a hybrid format, or with seat time in a classroom format. So that's really helpful. That allows us to create hybrid options. If we didn't have that flexibility, that would not have been possible. So there again, this is a philosophical shift. They're the instructions that are in the trailer bills, and this is a direct quote, require us to consider in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible when we're developing our plans. And again, our focus was focusing on minimizing interaction to create the most safe situation. That was our guiding principle early on. Well, this is going to require us to shift how we look at this. They don't provide a lot of great detail on this, but certainly when they're looking at our plans in terms of allow us to get funding, they're going to be looking for that. If we're in a virtual format, they are going to be requiring daily live interaction. And as it's said in the letter of how it's written, between peers and between peers and teachers. So that's going to have to be a component of our instructional plans moving forward. They have guidance around attendance. Attendance is required. It's going to be required daily. And that is going to be something we're going to have to build into our plans as well. And they have very strong opinions about distance learning. They definitely want it to be something that is as synchronous as possible. I think that's the theme. And what that means is even if you're sitting at home as a student at your desk, having live instruction or as much as possible live classes or streamed classes in some kind of format is something that is going to be that they're going to be that'll be a component that we have to consider in our plans moving forward. Certainly, it's also something that we heard from parents as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute as we get to this. So when we had a rolling survey all the way back from March until June that I helped inform our plans. When we announced our town hall meeting tonight, we had another survey link posted, and after we posted that, we got 20. So far, we have 22 pages of comments, questions, and concerns, and that's distilled down into 124 questions and 156 comments. Lots of strong concerns and questions about. We want more in-class time. There needs to be. You have to have more seat time for kids. And of the comments that were related to that, 62% of the comments related to were in that area wanted more in-class instructional time, more seat time, or 100% get our kids to school all of the time. And then conversely, we had, of the people that commented on this topic, 38% did not want students to return at all, period, unless there was a vaccine or 100% cure, the COVID had been eradicated near 100% or definitely down to almost guaranteed safe levels. So really strong polarized feelings on both of those sides. One of the trends that ran through both of those areas is, regardless if you wanted more in-class time or regardless if you wanted virtual only, if there's a virtual component, everybody wanted more synchronous virtual learning, more direct streaming, more Zoom classes, whole classes, more live instruction. And that was definitely a theme that came through loud and clear when we were gathering information. Safety issues were also a big theme that ran through this. Masks, are we testing? How are we doing cleaning? How are we establishing group sizes? And a lot of that information is now contained in that document I referenced from Alameda County, which is really helpful. Lots of questions around both and comments about the hybrid options we presented last Tuesday, questions about groups and comments about how we should create our groups. Are we going to core siblings together if we have an AM/PM kind of schedule? Lots of comments about that. And then also lots of comments and questions about, are we offering band? What about PE? What about science labs? What about sports? What about marching band? What about all of these other programs? And a lot of those are still in limbo, but those are the themes that came through the comments. We are going to try to take all of the information and put it together in a format that we can share. Daycare, and that was also a big one. A lot of people in need of, they need someone to care for their kids, either because they have to go to work, or in these hybrid models, it just doesn't work without that daycare. The good news is we have a Kids First program in our district. We always have, or have for quite some time. We will be offering that again next fall, and we're expanding it. There's going to be a full day daycare option, and also half days, AM, PM. It is a fee-based program, so there is a charge to it. There's no other way around that right now, but at least that is an option that we have for our families and for the staff members who have students and children that need watching. That has always been a TK through 5 kind of program. So if you've got really young ones, this isn't going to help with that, unfortunately. But at least we have that option. Okay, so next steps, again, you heard me talk about, we're going to gather information from tonight. We are going to take the information with the documents that we've referenced. We're going to put it all together. We're going to try to bring it back to our board. We're going to work with our bargaining units starting as early as next week, and we're going to bring it back to our board next on the 14th, and then go from there. And I don't really know exactly how it's going to play out from there because things keep changing, but that's the plan. So at this point, I'm going to shift it over. We have a moderator who's going to help us with our question and answer period. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Matos, who's going to help with that, to share with you our protocols for that.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. As Dr. Thompson shared, that we want to spend the majority of our time listening to you and hear your thoughts and comments and listen to your questions regarding the reopening of schools. And so to the degree possible, when we comment or if we respond to speakers, we're going to try to keep our responses really brief. Dr. Thompson's going to try to be very brief. We do have a hard stop at 7, and we do want to allow for as many of our attendees to participate as possible. We're going to be taking notes, and we still also have an active survey link on our website under the town hall link. If you don't speak tonight or you don't feel like speaking tonight, you can share your thoughts with us by using that link. Any speaker tonight is going to be allotted 2 minutes to speak solely on the reopening plans. In order to speak, you're going to use the raise hand feature on your Zoom screen. If you're calling in, we do have a couple of phone call folks. If you hit *9, that will raise your hand. I'm going to be monitoring the attendees and with raised hands, and we're going to try to call folks on a first come, first served basis. Zoom isn't perfect. There's more on that in just a second. And neither are we. So I apologize in advance if I accidentally skip someone. My plan is, as I announce the speaker, much like we do in the board meetings, I'll announce the speaker and then announce the next speaker so that person can be ready. When it's your turn, if you can please state your name, and if you have students in the district, please share what level they're at, elementary, middle, or high school. So with Zoom, although we have upgraded our Zoom account, the district Zoom account, to accommodate the 700 registrants for tonight's town hall, for some reason, Zoom is limiting us to 100 people. So we are live streaming this town hall on YouTube, and we now have a pop-up alert on our website. So anybody who goes trying to find out what's going on can go to mynhusd.org. They'll have a pop-up and they can click on the link there and watch the YouTube live stream. Our apologies, we have no idea how that happened. If there are folks who are watching this on YouTube and are a little frustrated because they don't have an opportunity to raise their hand, I do want to remind you again that we have on our webpage, mynhusd.org, underneath the spotlight section at the very bottom, the town hall link. You can click on that link, and that survey is still active, and you can enter your name and enter your information and your questions, thoughts, or comments. Again, our apologies. We thought we had that all taken care of. We have no idea why Zoom is limiting us. So with that, Dr. Thompson, is it okay if we start the questions?
Absolutely. And again, I apologize. We about the limited participants. We're working through it, but I think anyway, we'll start going now and do the best we can with this.
Got it. Okay, so our first speaker is going to be Allison Miller, and Allison will unmute you in just a second. Following Ms. Miller is going to be Nicholas Azizian. He'll be next. Thank you. Ms. Miller, are you there? Sorry, we're gonna go to Nicholas and Rob Worthy. Nicholas, go ahead. I'm gonna go to Rob. I'm sorry. Rob Worthing, why don't you go ahead and try?
Are you able to hear me? Wonderful. Thank you, board members and New Haven staff. Bear with me, I'm going to try to read it quick. I've kind of got some notes here so I can get through my 2 minutes. Although maybe now I might have 6, you never know. I draft this quick memorandum as a father of 2 students in the New Haven Unified School District, a product of the public education system, family of multiple 20+ year tenured elementary school level teachers, and a passionate advocate for education. My daughters will be in the 2nd grade and 6th grade this fall, and I am concerned the current plans for reopening schools are not in their best interest. The proposed 6-foot social distance rules and virtual learning are in direct contrast to this need. I understand and am in support of the need to keep children apart for the spread of germs. However, this need is so strong on both sides, we need to find a way for the children to see their teachers and peers much more often than a few hours a week. Regarding the elementary school level plans, these grade level schools are in need of in-person teacher-student interaction, certainly more than half a day once a week. The virtual setting is not conducive of learning at this age. Children are social beings by nature. They need to be face-to-face, to talk, to giggle, to be near each other as part of their development. Many more associated intangibles happen within the classroom. For instance, nonverbal communication clues the students display that our trained teachers can pick up on. From my conversations with my sister and other educators, I know that much of the education experience is based on how well the teachers can read the students. The nonverbal clues allow us teacher to know when to give another example, even when no one in the class will admit out loud they need clarification. The body language lets the teachers know when these students need a brain break before they start the next lesson. I know how much our teachers miss these interactions and how much they truly matter in the teaching, but the distance learning we've all experienced the last months did not allow these interactions to take place as everyone was working how to make this reality. Social interaction and peer-to-peer learning by observations in your classroom and out of the classroom, I really target you and ask you to target a minimum of 3 days of instruction. Otherwise, I fear we're setting our students up for hardships. I'm going to skip forward real quick if I can. The hybrid program proposing 30 minutes experience with their teacher is going to devalue the entire educational experience. Children strive consistency. They thrive on it. They need more. They need it more than they ever realized. There is no consistency in 30 minutes a week. They will feel their teachers are not only willing, because they have no idea the schedule is not what educators may want, but it's what they're forced into, that the teachers only given 30 minutes a week is all they're going to give back. It's going to set us back educationally to a level we can't even imagine. Our decisions now will set the stage for what educators look like for the rest of their educational career. I got more, but it looks like my time's up.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Try to get Nicholas Azizian back. Mr. Azizian. Okay, we'll be going to Kelly Jenkins. Following Miss Jenkins will be Nancy Santiago.
Hi, can you hear me? I just had some questions I was hoping you could address about kind of what PPE will be used, whether it's just masks or anything else. Maybe cleaning procedures, none of that has really been spoken to. I'm not overly concerned about that, but I know a lot of people are, so I think that'd be nice for you to address. And I'm also curious if, you could speak to the budget criteria and whether or not that allows the flexibility to have a model whereby parents who would like to keep their children at home and do 100% virtual option could do that, thus allowing some more space in the classrooms for people who would like to be in the classrooms full time. So maybe that kind of hybrid model would be an option, but I'm not sure what the budget restrictions would be there. It'd be nice if you could speak to those items.
Sure, I can address those briefly. We have, again, the safety and PPE guidance we have is new, and we got it last Thursday. You can go for a full breakdown of what that looks like. You can access that document on the link that's on our website from the Alameda County Public Health Department. Masks are required. There are some guidance on how we establish groups and some recommendations. But other than the masks being required, the cloth masks, there isn't, for example, face masks aren't required, that kind of thing. Cleaning is something that we are definitely going to be looking at cleaning between classroom use and cohorts. So for example, between groups of students accessing in the same space, that's something that we'll have in place. How that looks will vary depending on the final plans that we land on. Hopefully that makes sense. But again, if you want more guidance or more information about what we're required to do and what's recommended related to safety and PPE and all that, go to that document. It's about a 10 or 12 page document that has the Alameda County Public Health Department requirements and guidelines. So that's new information, and it was new to us as of last Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry, the last piece. We for those parents that want to keep their students at home regardless, we have a separate program we're offering. It's actually a separate school. It's housed within our Dakota School for Independent Study, and it's a program under that school called our Personalized Learning Academy, and it's a fully online school. It'll have a teacher that will have a cohort of students, and it will follow the class size language in our contract. So if there's one teacher assigned to 24 students at the kindergarten level, for example, and those students will be engaged in fully online learning through vetted and rigorous online programs. For example, we're going to use a CELUS at the 6th through 12 grade programs, or grade 6 through 12 for the core content. And one teacher will be acting as a facilitator to help the cohort of students that person's assigned to maneuver through those things. Those kids at the secondary level may all have different classes, different science classes and whatnot, and that teacher will work with those students to help them go through the online programming. So I want to be clear though, this is a different school. So you would be, if you are, for example, your student goes to Pioneer, you would be withdrawing from Pioneer and enrolling in the Personalized Learning Academy. And we would be, and you would be in that school. If you wanted to come back to Pioneer, you would be moving back to Pioneer just like you would if you were transferring between schools. And we would, if there's space available, we'd get you back there. But we can't just allow fluid movement between these programs because we have to staff them and we have to create schedules. And particularly when you get to the secondary level with grade 6 through 12, there's master schedules that are based around the number of students enrolled in the schools that are not fluid. They can't just change. You can't move teachers around throughout the year. At the semester is something we can look at the trimester we can look at it, but it's really going to be movement between the programs is going to be based on space available and whether or not we can operationally make it happen. So for example, if you enroll in the Personalized Learning Academy, you should plan on being in that academy for the year. And then if there's an opportunity to transfer out, it would be at the semester or the trimester at the lower grades if there's space available. So that's something that I don't think was clear. There's more information about that coming. We're actually going to launch the registration for this tomorrow on our website. So if you go to our website, you'll actually be able, if this is something you want, you'll be able to register your students in that program. And that starts tomorrow. So that we're excited to be able to offer that. We hope to continue to be able to offer that program to meet the need of the students who want that once we're past this COVID crisis. So I hope that answers the questions. And,
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I think that was information a lot of people weren't aware of, so I appreciate you taking the question.
Thank you. So next is Nancy Santiago, followed by Beverly Contreras.
Hi, this is Nancy Santiago. I teach 5th grade at Easton, but I'm also a parent of a middle school student going into 7th grade. I am wondering about a couple of things. So as a parent and a teacher, I heard you were going to offer Kids First, but for middle school, they had Club Un. Is that still going to be offered? And then my concern is, how are they able to do that all day with distance learning? So that's my first question.
Okay, the Kids First program, and I'm going to just check real quick. Hang on one second. So the half day and full day options are TK5 or K5? TK5. And then if they had other programming available, and I'm sorry, I don't know all of the different programming options that we've had in the past for Kids First, but that I don't know if they're going to be able to offer the other programming for middle school kids after school, that kind of thing. But the program that the full day and half day daycare options are going to be for TK5. And then obviously you'll have to, if you're in full virtual mode, like you're part of our personal learning academy, there may be times where students will have to, you'll have to pick your days. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week either. So the option you select and the hours you select will be based in part on which program your students enrolled in. And there's more information about that. It's on our website now, and we can have, if you have any more specific questions, we can certainly, you can either send them to us in an email, put them in the survey, or contact Kids First directly.
Okay, and then my other question is, some school districts are starting all virtual. I know San Lorenzo, I had heard, maybe I'm mistaken, and then the other schools was probably San Ramon. So do you anticipate that we will start virtually 100% when October comes?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I know a lot of schools, San Lorenzo and Castro Valley being two of them, were hoping to start the year virtually. When the governor signed his budget on Monday and the trailer bills that are attached, I was on the phone with both of those superintendents today, and both of them don't believe that they'll be able to start. They're not sure if they'll be able to even do that, because the guidelines require as much in-classroom time as possible. So right now, I'm fairly comfortable in saying that there is not a single superintendent in Alameda County that knows exactly how they're starting the year. And all of the plans we had up to date changed late last week.
Right.
So,
okay, and thank you, Dr. Thompson. And then my last question is, as a parent, how do you decide between hybrid model or virtual learning? Because I work for the district and I'm not 100% sure on how that virtual learning academy will go. Is there more information on that upcoming? Because I know the registration starts tomorrow. I think I heard you say. That would be my last question.
Okay, thank you. And the registration, there's more information in the registration process. You'll see more information about that. Again, the program we're using at the elementary level is, two programs, Acellus and Wonders. Wonders you're familiar with if you've had kids in our district. That's our current language arts adoption. And then at the secondary level, 6 through 12, we'll be using the Acellus platform. And that's something that you can go and look at yourself. You can go onto their website and see what that kind of experience looks like. And that will be, again, guided with a teacher. Your student will be assigned to a teacher helping guide through that process, not instructing students, but guiding them through the online instructional platform. It's going to be hard to make that decision as a parent, and I'm faced with that decision too as a parent. Do we want to start the year virtually, partially in virtual mode? What is the hybrid? What is it going to look like? And we don't know the answer to that. So it's going to be difficult for you to make a decision right now, for any parent to make a decision, me included, until we know exactly what the hybrid models might look like. But I think as a parent, what you need to know is if you are going to be sticking with your regular school, you should expect to be in a hybrid mode that will have some in-classroom component and some virtual component. You should expect to be potentially fully virtual within your school. And then you should expect to be at some point 100% back in. Everybody's back at school. You have to think that way in terms of those three things based on the conditions that are present in the world we live in. So that's the best guidance I can give you right now. That's what I'm thinking about as a parent is I need to be prepared for whatever comes. If I'm in a regular school, if I'm in the virtual learning academy, in our personalized learning academy, I'm locked in, it's online, and I'm going through that process. And those programs are not new. They've been out there for a long time. This is the first time we are fully implementing one of those programs for our students. And unfortunately, that's the best I can give you right now because, again, we're going to have to shift our virtual learning, our hybrid model plans based on the information we got late last week and as early as this Monday.
Okay, thank you. So next will be Beverly Contreras, followed by Serena Sarani.
Hello, can you hear me? Great. So I do have two kids. I have an incoming 6th grader and I have a special needs child that goes to special daycare at Logan. So a couple of questions that I would have is definitely how would you address the special daycare situation for my child in high school, knowing that she does take the school bus when there is no opportunity for social distancing, especially with transportation. And then the other one would definitely be, how are you going to address the situation with the classes, knowing that, especially at Logan, wherein you have a bigger size class situation over there, and there is no opportunity for social distancing, especially in the class that she has right now with the special day class situation. Thank you.
Yeah, special education classes are and that's definitely a significant area that for our reopening plans that we need to consider. Right now, we're hoping to have our special day classes operational for up to 4 hours a day with in-classroom time. You've listed several concerns that we have to take in consideration, such as space. For example, your typical SDC class may only have 12 students in it, and we can create a socially distance-based classroom with 12 students, but obviously there are students that a lot of times students in these classes have a lot of high needs, and how that looks, it will vary from class to class. Transportation is actually our most significant issue probably when it comes to that, because trying to create busing situations that meet all of the safety protocols we're bound to follow may be the most limiting factor in that. And if we may end up having to go to a half-day model, and but again, one of the problems is trying to figure out how we can actually logistically create routes, and then they're very expensive as well. So how do we actually fund them? And we don't get any additional funding for this type of thing. But we're trying to work through that. Our goal is to have our STC kids back in the class as much as possible, ideally up to 4 hours a day. And that's ideal. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's what we're kind of working with. How can we make that happen? And if we can't make that happen, how do we work backwards from there to maximize student instructional time for our STC kids? And hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, next is Serena Sarani, and after Ms. Sarani is going to be Kimberly DeBono.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. All right. I have a son and goes to Kitayama Elementary, and he is going into 5th grade. I'm also a teacher at Fremont Unified School District. I guess I'm one of those parents that wants to wait until it's safe. But my son truthfully did not do well in the distance learning. even though, he has me here as a resource. But I'm just wondering, in the hybrid situation, is it going to be worth it to go? I mean, is school going to be changed so much with all the restrictions of the new rules and everything that I need to like wrap my head around what it's going to possibly look like. And I know you're still trying to plan because you don't have all the input and things are changing all the time. But like, even with distance learning, music class, there was no kind of music learning going on. And so I just wonder, like, the teacher said that they would have needed like more equipment to be able to run a music class through Zoom. And so in a hybrid model, let's say, what would happen with the prep teachers or the specialist teachers? I mean, we know that possibly half a day they would be in school, but then what would happen with the specialists like PE and music and media or such and such? How would that be done virtually, or and are they going to have like no recess, depending on the safety measures that need to be taken?
Lots of great questions. One of the challenges of starting out in remote learning and then shifting to what we call virtual learning, and the challenges and frustrations felt by students, parents, and teachers was that because it happened so quickly, there was no accountability component to it. There were no grades, that kind of thing, or we had pass, no pass. And that is not happening in the fall. There is not only an attendance accountability piece, but there's no waiver on grades. There will be grades, there'll be accountability, there'll be assessments, which enables teachers to be able to keep track of student progress. It enables students, and my son was one of them. When he found out that it was pass, no pass, and that essentially he'd already passed, he didn't do anything. And he had no incentive to do anything. It was terrible as a parent. And as an educator, I felt frustrated by the whole process. So that will be different. So regardless of how we open in a hybrid format or a virtual format, just that level of accountability is going to make it a more rigorous and a more valid program, I think.
I'm sorry, in the specialist area, I don't think it was because he wasn't going to be held accountable. I think it was because, obviously school closed at the last minute, but just the technology that the teacher had, they didn't have to translate anything for the learning.
Specialists are an area that's definitely, for example, one of the things that's not required in the fall is PE. So that's came out in the trailer bill. So how do we incorporate PE? What do we do? Music's another one where just you think about it, you don't want your student anywhere near a room full of 40 kids, blowing on an instrument. That sounds like a terrible idea in this COVID environment. So how do we have music virtually? What do we do if we can't have, even if we're right now have students back in school, we're not going to have music classes as they were. I don't even think it's a good idea at this point to have 12 students in a big classroom, blowing into an instrument. I mean, that probably is a terrible idea. But so how we're going to integrate the specialists at the elementary level and at the secondary level, incorporate these other classes into a hybrid model or a virtual model is still something we're working out. And I haven't seen anybody come up with a great answer to that across the entire county or the state, but it's something that we're going to have to work with. I mean, we have great teachers that are providing great programming, and we need to find a way to integrate that to the degree that we can in our hybrid models and our virtual models moving forward. So, and our in-classroom models, if your kid's going to school and you're going to your music teacher, what does that look like? And so we don't have the answers to that yet, but it is definitely something that we are thinking about moving forward. And how we structure our hybrid models based on the new guidance we got will dictate in part what we can do and what we can't do when it comes to our specialists. So stay tuned for that one.
Hybrid model, is that only for the classroom teacher, or is that also including the specialist teachers?
Yeah, again, how the specialists come into play into a hybrid model will depend on what we can do. And for example, the models that we shared last week, that would have been probably a virtual component involving our specialists. Now with the new information we have, I don't know what that looks like. If there's going to be an in-classroom component with our specialists, I don't have an answer to that. And it is something that is high on our list of things to think about, but we really need to figure out logistically with the new guidance what we can do with our hybrid models. And remember that this is information that we didn't even have until Thursday, and we only had part of it. And then we were getting more of it, clarification on up to yesterday. So this is all new to us, and it's helpful, which is nice. But I can't answer your questions yet because we need to figure out how we can come up with a hybrid model that works logistically, and then how we can incorporate all of these other areas that you're talking about, the specialists and these other programs, into that model. And so stay tuned. We don't have the answers to that yet.
Thank you. Next will be Kimberly DeBono, followed by Susil Rayamaji.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. My question is regarding the academy, the virtual academy. I know that enrollment numbers will depend on how many people enroll, but as far as planning, what is the number of students that can be in a particular classroom? And my second part of that question is, how many students can one teacher have in this academy? And I know it will be based on how much enrollment and interest is involved in this particular academy. But in terms of, in an ideal situation, let's say, would a regular teacher have 30 kids, or could they have 60 kids, or what does that look like?
So and again, this isn't really this is a new program within our school that's been in existence for a long time. And we will be complying with the class size language we have in our contract with NHTA. So for example, a kindergarten teacher will have no more than 24 students, that type of thing. So we're going to be following that language and assigning cohorts of students to teachers that are consistent with the class size contract language. Hopefully that answers your question. We haven't set a cap on how many students can enroll in the academy because we want to make it available for whoever needs it moving forward. So we won't know how big the school is going to be until we go through the enrollment process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now it'll be Susil Rayamaji, and then next will be Alicia Aguilar-Godinez.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, my question is, first question is, when do you think you'll be able to decide or inform of parents that whether it's going to be hybrid or fully virtual? That's one. The other thing, the other question that I have is for the students who are in Logan versus, let's say, somebody going in kindergarten, right? I would assume the one going in Logan High School, well, they are more prepared and they know virtual setup much more. So is that going to take into effect, into considerations? And also, is me being personally, I would like to have my kids stay home unless everything is good, right? Because the school cannot guarantee that they won't be contracted. The way this is all seems to be more experimental right now, right? So the school cannot guarantee if somebody gets it and devastating things happens after that, right? So I would, what are the other factors you're going to take into considerations to do that? I would rather say be safe now than sorry later, So be more, take more precautions, and I'll take off from there.
Okay, so there were three parts to that, and I'm going to address the first and the third part. I didn't quite understand the second part, so I'm going to ask you to restate that if you can. But as far as when we'll know whether we're going virtual or hybrid, we are going to be prepared to. The one option that we know is not looking like a realistic option is coming fully back to school. So that's one of the three options that are available, but we aren't even considering that now, and that's something that we've done for years. We know how to do that. So we will be prepared to open the school in either a hybrid or a virtual format. Right now, if the decision was made today, we would be opening in a hybrid format. But every time I turn on the news, we all do the same thing. We look at the news and now there's new spikes. They're closing everything down. Beaches are closed and all that. It's possible that we'll get an order from the public health official saying we can't open in a hybrid mode. So that kind of gets to the third part, which is what factors do we consider when we are choosing when to open and how we're going to reopen. So really that's driven by the Alameda County Public Health Department. And right now, if we can meet the conditions that are outlined in that document that is shared with all of you on our website, we are expected to open either 100% in classroom or in a hybrid model. And we know for us what that means is a hybrid model where there's some in-classroom instruction and some virtual learning. So it's really driven almost entirely by that. The other factor that drives how we open is any guidance we get from the state. And the state controls us by funding. So for example, the trailer bills attached to the budget that was passed on Monday contain very clear parameters. And what that basically tells us is, in some cases, clear parameters, in some cases, their priority that they've described, and then giving us some flexibility on how to implement that. But what that means is, if we want to receive funding that is required to pay teachers and turn on lights and buy textbooks, we have to comply with those rules and regulations. So the factors we use for safety and opening are related to statutory requirements from the state and health information we get from the Alameda County Public Health Department. And it's driven entirely by those two things. We don't have a lot of discretion to, for example, go against the county public health officer. We can't do that. And so that's why that is the case. So we will decide as quickly as we can, but the goal, if you remember that pyramid that I showed you earlier in the screen, if we were able to achieve that goal of functioning in that top level of the pyramid, we're going to be flexible enough to, even as up to the day before, we open schools on the 12th of August. And on the 11th, if we learn that there's a giant outbreak and the public health department comes out and says, nope, no schools can open, then we will be ready to open on the 12th in virtual format. That's the goal. So right now, if we made a decision today, we're opening in a hybrid format, even though we haven't developed those plans completely yet. But that could change all the way up to when school opens, and quite frankly, all the way through the fall. Whether what format we're in our regular schools is going to be dependent on the health information available at that time and the directives we're getting that way. So I don't know if I addressed the second part of your question.
Quick follow-up on that is will we have option to either send or have a virtual totally for the parents, right? Because that should be an option, I believe. In situation like this is very unusual time, so that should be given an option, I believe, if someone can do it that way. The other follow-up question is there going to be, how are you going to enforce the social distancing even if it's a hybrid mode, right? Is there going to be additional resources doing that at school? How is that going to be conducted? Thank you.
Okay, so there is the program we're offering next year is our Personalized Learning Academy. That's the program where enrollment in that program starts tomorrow. You can go to our website for that information. And that is a fully online virtual option. But again, it's enrolling in a different school. It's enrolling in our Personalized Learning Academy at the Dakota School. So you would be withdrawing from whatever school you're in and enrolling in that program. And you would be part of that program for the year or until we were able to accommodate a transfer, which could be, I can't make any promise about what that looks like. So that is an option. If you choose to stay with your regular school, you will be in one of three formats and probably in all three formats at different times in the year, which is 100% virtual, in a hybrid, part virtual, part in classroom, and 100% in class all day long. I anticipate right now, knowing what we know, that we would be in all three of those modes throughout the school year next year at our regular schools. But again, nobody can predict what this virus is going to do, what this outbreak is going to do. And so it's all dependent on which mode we're in, depends on the health information at the time. So enforcing social distancing, yeah, that's a challenge. And that's why we're probably going to have an A-B schedule when in our hybrid mode where we have fewer students at school, some students at home, some students at school. That will help us regulate the flow of students in and out of classrooms. Students wearing face masks and following the spacing protocols is something that, that'll be part of the daily routine that administrators and staff have to regulate and monitor. We do it anyway. This is just a new twist on it, and students that aren't compliant will get in trouble. And that's the way that works. We don't get any additional resources for that. And again, this is a good time for me to highlight, even though we were, and I'm going to put my air quotes here, saved in the budget that was signed from what was presented during the May revision of the budget, I want everybody to remember that the budget that we received in January was less than ideal. We didn't like it. We were lobbying for more money coming to schools, and what was adopted on Monday and signed on Monday has less money than that January budget. So we're getting a lot less money than we expected. It's not nearly as bad as what was proposed in May, but what you're hearing in the news is schools were spared. No, schools were not spared. We have a worse budget, way worse budget than we had from last year, and we're expected to do all of this work, these added things with less money in our operating budget than we had last year. So no, there are not additional resources coming that way that are helpful for us. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. So next is going to be Alicia Aguilar Godinez. Then I'd like to interject some of the questions that we're getting from folks who aren't able to participate because we reached the cap. So we'll do Alicia Aguilar Godinez. We'll do a question that's come in, and then after that will be Megan McCollum. So Alicia, you are up.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm a mother of a kindergarten graduate in the medical field and also an instructor at Chabot College. So I understand all aspects of COVID, given my current life. Today, with the comments that were being made previous, with the current state of where COVID cases are, the district feels like it would be safe, even though the numbers are higher than they were in March, to return as a hybrid is a question I have. And if so, at what point will a shutdown take place? Because I know the first time around, the shutdown took a while to be put in place. So will there be some type of guidelines for a shutdown? When will it not be safe for our students to return? And if our numbers are climbing as a state, because previously said, as of right now, as if we were going back tomorrow, we would be opening with the hybrid. And that's a little alarming given that our numbers are higher than they were in March. Those are some questions I have in regards to COVID. And then also my kindergartner struggled throughout kindergarten. And for me to say that I would strictly put her on an online learning base for COVID related reasons to keep her safe, and then have her struggle and not be able to get help either mid-year or the following year seems a little alarming to me, because as a parent, of course, I want to keep my child safe, as do other parents. However, not having any resources for a whole mid-year or year, that's a long time in between. And what do you do with that? What would be the steps? Would it be a case by case, or would there be resources, or would we just be out of luck until mid-year or the following year?
Okay, lots of good questions and comments. So, I want to be really clear. We don't choose to decide when school, we actually close schools when it's time to do that, but we do that based on the information we receive from the Alameda County Public Health Department. So if the Alameda County Public Health Department says it is safe to open schools, and if you meet these guidelines, we open schools because we really don't have a choice. All of everything that we do is tied to how we operate within the context of the state rules and guidelines. And the state rules and guidelines tell us that we're open unless we're told we can't be. So that decision is not made by schools. That decision is made by the Alameda County Public Health Department, who's going to set the guidelines and set the parameters around when we open. Yes, there appears to be lots of new cases in Alameda County and across the state and across the country. But if we had to make a decision today, we are opening in a hybrid mode, following the parameters given to us by the Alameda County Public Health Department. I've got a doctoral degree, but you don't want me making any decisions about the health and safety, the medical decisions about the health and safety of students. We rely on experts for that. The expert we rely on is the Alameda County Public Health Department. So, and I'm sure you're aware of how they operate and how they interplay with the medical profession, since that's your profession. But really, it puts us in a difficult spot, because sometimes the social pressure and social need in the community is not aligned with the medical and safety guidance we're getting from the public health department. But I think they've gotten better at knowing how we operate, and certainly we've gotten better at working together. I think this again caught everybody off guard in the spring, but when and how we open and close schools will be determined by what the Alameda County Public Health Department tells us. We will not be making those decisions in isolation locally here, and no school district will be. So there's that. And then the other thing I'll say that on a positive side is I believe, and I know the virtual learning experience for anybody in that mode, whether you're in our Personal Learning Academy, which is a totally different program, or you're flowing in and out of a hybrid model or a virtual model at your school site, we've gotten better. We have great teachers. We have hardworking teachers, and we've learned a lot. We are looking at different learning platforms that will make it easier for our teachers and students to access, that we should have in place in the fall. We have new requirements about what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to offer the type of instruction. When we first started, I mean, I remember that day. We'll never forget that day when we closed schools and went, okay, we're closing schools today, and we have no idea what we're doing starting tomorrow. And that was truly how it worked. Well, that's not the case now. We know more about what to expect in a virtual mode, and we're preparing for that. So, and there's accountability. So your students will be, and along with that, better resources, which is what you were getting at, is what resources will be able to help my student. There should be a lot more of all of that moving forward, because again, we have a little experience, we're preparing for it, and we'll be better at it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be ideal for kids that need to be in a classroom all the time. I totally get that. We all get that, but we'll make it as good as we can make it, given the circumstances we have. So hopefully that addressed those questions.
Thank you. And so we're going to take a question that was written in, and then following this will be Megan McCollum. This is a question from Kathy. If classes need to be smaller, can the district hire more teachers? And secondly, is accommodating students with more class time a space or a resource problem?
So it's really good questions. The reality is no, we are not going to be hiring more teachers. Depending on which fund you're looking at, approximately 90% of our budget is going to staff, and hiring teachers. We've got less money to use than we have from last year. And anytime if you're going to take a class, for example, of 30 and make 2 classes of 15, well, that's a new teacher. And, you can use $100,000 as the cost of a teacher, for example. It's more or less depending on where people are in the salary schedule. And when I say cost, I mean, that's not necessarily what the teacher's paid. There's lots of other costs that we pay when we hire somebody that most people are aware of, statutory costs. But, just use that as a ballpark figure. So now you've taken one class that cost $100 to staff and made it $200. So if you were going to do that across the district, we would be doubling our staffing costs for teachers, which we can't do. We have no money for that. We have less money this year than we had last year. So, that is not a possibility. And so when we're making classes smaller, what that means is we're splitting them. So one teacher with 30 students has two groups of 15, and which is why we can't have, and well, and the other thing is there, even though we've been shrinking over the years, if we were to just simply create twice as many classes, we do not have twice as many classrooms. So not only do we not have the space, but we don't have the resources to do it. And even if we did have both of those things, trying to now hire double our staff or a third more staff or quarter more staff is probably not possible, even if we wanted to do that. So there are limiting factors all the way along, and all of those factors come into play in terms of how much actual in-seat time we can have in the classroom. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. So next will be Megan McCollum, and then I will do another question, and then following that will be Stan Kwong.
Hi, I want to say I have 3 daughters, 2 at Pioneer and 1 at IVC. And I'm a little confused with the logic on daycare at the schools. I feel comfortable sending my kids back to school knowing that they're going to be in like a cohort of 15. But then if the other kids in their cohort are going to Kids First, and are those kids going to be all mixed together like they traditionally have been in the Kids First programs? And then isn't my kid being exposed to basically everyone in the school instead of just their cohort of 15 or so?
Yeah, unfortunately, anytime your kids are going to be present in a classroom, the one thing that we can't control, putting Kids First aside for a second, is who they interact with outside of that cohort. So you're always going to have that issue. With Kids First, no, their cohorts will not be created around, for example, it's not going to be the same 15 kids maybe that your student is with during the day. They will not be the same kids that will be in Kids First. Well, I'd be very surprised if that was possible. So at Kids First, we'll be following all the safety protocols that are used in other daycare programs that are currently operating right now, and those will be in place. But again, the one thing that we don't know beyond the school walls in general is who our students are interacting with outside of school, and that Kids First is part of that as well. So yes, your student will be interacting with the other students at Kid First in as safe a way as we can make it, but it's still interacting with other groups of students for sure.
Okay, I have another, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. My daughter is going into 7th grade, and in this district, you don't get any sex education talk until 7th grade, which I feel is too late already as it is. And with all the, only being in class for a limited amount of time, I don't want that topic to get lost in the shuffle this year. I think it needs to be expanded, but I understand that's not the crisis we're dealing with right now. So I just want to say, I hope that can stay a priority during this time.
Yeah, and to address that, to the degree possible, we're going to try to offer the same courses you would normally take if you were in 7th grade at any other time, to the degree that we can. And it's also offered in 8th grade. Hang on one second. Let me just make sure I got that. So yeah, that's it's a little clarity. It'll be offered, I think, in 8th for those who didn't get it last year. So we're trying to make that up as well. So anyway, yeah, good questions, good comments. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to read a question that was sent in, and following that question will be Stan Kwong. This question's from Lionel. Does the district have a plan to close or keep open in the event of any confirmed COVID cases? And what are the policies and procedures in handling confirmed cases?
Yeah, this is another one that we'll given the way things are going, we'll probably have to deal with. So when we get a confirmed case, we get that information from the Alameda County Public Health Department. And again, I keep deferring to the Alameda County Public Health Department, but they're the experts that help us decide how to proceed. and whether we close down the school and for how long will be made. That decision will be made either directly by the Alameda County Public Health Department or in direct collaboration with the Alameda County Public Health Department. Because again, we do not have any experts in the district who are versed in making those types of decisions, of public health decisions. So yeah, it's we that's the answer to that question. We'll be following their guidance on that.
Thank you. So next is Stan Kwong, and then I'll do another question, and then we'll be Colleen Hazlett.
Sorry, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So I have a rising senior at Logan and a rising middle schooler going to IVC. My three areas of concern are in the following order: instruction time, the curriculum tools, as well as socialization. So when I looked at the overall delivery models for basically all of the proposals, it seems to be a very loose schedule as far as Mondays and Fridays are concerned. I realize that there's one session of class in class, and then there's sort of two virtual. What I didn't get a sense of is what is the expectation for things like on Monday and Friday? I agree with the initial comment of, I think there just needs to be more teacher instruction led curriculum, right? And whether it's in class or virtual, I don't actually mind one way or the other. I agree that it's going to be on safety. I'd like more, but I just can't. When I look at the proposal, I see about 50% instruction led, where the other half is sort of student led. And I have fears of that because of the experience that we had in the back half of 20. I realize that we know more. We're more prepared for this, but I still think that it just doesn't work out where kids lead themselves. And so that's one area of concern. And then the other one is in regards to curriculum and tools. Dr. Thompson, you mentioned about, we know more, we have more tools. One of the things that I've always liked about, the central body like this is that, you're there regimenting the standard tools that all sites would use. But, even if I had from now till the start of school, I might have trouble getting geared up on those tools. And so I think, in order to put a best practice in place, I think the teachers need more time to play with the tools. I mean, before this started, I was on 15 minutes before here. We had trouble setting up the Zoom, right? Getting off mute, getting on mute, right? And that's a tool that we're using all the time. So if we're using a curriculum tool, I just think we need more time with it. And so respectfully, I think that, if we know what those options are, they should be communicated and everybody should be taught up in using it, even the teachers and students. And then the last one, I think it's been mentioned in a couple other times, but a lot of the school experience happens, and I have a senior and a new middle schooler. They need that socialization time. And so, I don't know if there's activities that we're going to continue to support. I know you mentioned about choir and other things like that, but those are real concerns for me, right? Because I want my kids and other kids to have the experience of, going to a forensics, doing track and field, doing show choir, performing. These are all things that we might be able to do virtually. And I was just hoping that we had the priority in order to make those three things happen. So I know I'm at time here, and I'll take my answers offline.
Okay, well, the three areas are all three legitimate areas of concern. And one of the themes that we've seen so far, definitely, and I kind of highlighted that earlier, is that there is a strong desire amongst our parent and student community to have more teacher-led instruction in one way or the other, and across either seat time or virtual time. It's also the guiding mandate that the state gave us, and when it comes to creating schedules, and I gave you that quote earlier on, that we're supposed to be looking at maximizing in-seat time, and if we're not, having very clear guidelines about how much of our instruction is synchronous or teacher-led. So that is certainly something that we'll be looking at, and we'll be more prepared to do moving forward. And that gets to the curricular tools piece. And time is our problem. And tonight's a perfect example. And we, when we scheduled this town meeting, we realized that our subscription with Zoom, which is the vehicle we're using obviously for this type of thing, did not accommodate more than a couple hundred. I can't remember exactly what the number was, but it was very clear that we're going to need one that goes up to a much greater number. So the maximum number of participants you can have in a Zoom setting is 1,000. We got that subscription. We put it in. We were ready to go. And we had no idea, and nobody told us, nor did we ever imagine it being a problem, that even though you can have 1,000 people attend, that there'd be a limit on the number of people who can participate. That is not something that even crossed our minds. We had no idea. It was never communicated to us. We learned it as we're going along. I didn't know it until we were talking. So that will be true with our teachers as well in the fall, because here's how it works. We have 2 days with teachers report 2 days before the start of the year. One of those days is our day to work with them on professional development and all of the other operational types of things we need to work on with teachers. And that is it. We don't have any other time than 1 day before school where we can require teachers to do any kind of professional development or training. So that is a very limiting factor when it comes to using new curricular and operational tools. One of the things you saw in the schedules that you didn't like was a lot of time that wasn't structured and teacher led. But one of the things we were trying to build in there as well is time for teachers to get the professional development that we know we can't provide ahead of time. So even though in a perfect world, no matter what you do, we've been using Zoom since March and didn't know that this was a problem until this is our largest meeting ever. We've never had more than 100 participants. Who knew? It's never been a problem. It's never been communicated. That'll be true with the instructional tools that teachers are using in the fall as well. And we'll work through it as best we can. We'll adapt. Like right now, we're trying to take questions emailed, read them, and go live and do that, because that's the world we live in now. And that's what we'll all be doing. So that'll be true for the teachers as well. Socialization is, I'll tell you, and you always, if you've listened to me talk, you hear me refer to my son often, because he'll be a senior next year. And this last few months was miserable for him. He thrives on those social interactions. He runs track, he plays football, he engages in all kinds of other activities. And when that was taken away, it was a huge issue, a mental issue for him. And it was something that we really struggled with as a family. So being able to provide those opportunities to the degree we can is critically important. I mean, the reality for all of our kids is they don't remember what novel they read in 10th grade, but they'll remember being in forensics in the competition they were with, or that event at track and field, or who they were hanging out with. Those are the things that connect kids to our schools and our learning and all of that. And that is we will do whatever we can do to offer those programs. It's going to be limited by safety first and by the guidance we get by the public health department.
Thank you for taking my questions. I guess one quick follow-up. What percentage of teacher-led instruction do you think is going to be mandated across the board, like by week?
Well, I know if the government had its way, there would be in-classroom instruction 4 hours a day, or teacher-led instruction 4 hours a day for most students. Again, slightly smaller for others. That would be their priority, but that they don't live in the reality we live in. So the reality we live in is how can we, and thankfully, the guidance we got from the public health department gives us more flexibility in how we can create groups. So we need to put all of that together and figure out how we can configure our groups and how we configure our groups in a hybrid model. That's what I'm describing now, because we won't be able to have everybody back for 4 hours a day in classrooms. That's just not possible given the guidelines that come through the public health department. So we'll be working on that. And again, we're kind of shifting the philosophy towards, well, the guidance we're getting is as much teacher-led and in classroom time as possible. So those will be two of the factors we're using. We'll take the models we have that the teachers that our design teams developed. We'll apply the new guidance that we have, and we'll apply the feedback we're getting from all of you, both tonight and in the survey data, and we'll come up with models. So that's a long way of saying, hold tight. We'll let you know soon. Ideally, as soon as our next board meeting on the 14th of July.
All right, so I have a question from Erica, and then after that question will be Colleen Hazlett. How are English learner students going to get their designated time in any of the two learning models? And how will two-way dual language work for this upcoming year?
Okay, so the guidance that we got from the state and the state budget includes a component about English language learning and the requirements around that. Our goal is to offer the same ELD instruction, in either virtual or in classroom format that we would provide. In our virtual learning academy, there's an ELD component to that as well for students that have that need. So our goal is to have, to the degree we can provide continuity of service in any other areas, to also continue that with our English language learners. So with the dual language immersion program, that's going to be a really interesting one. So we're fully prepared to move forward both in our Spanish and our Mandarin program, we have good people working on the instructional side of the house to make sure that those experiences are just like the other learning experiences that we're going to be able to provide for students that are not in those programs. So that should be it should still continue moving forward as planned, and it'll be just in some type of a hybrid or virtual model depending on the situation. And that's the general answer to that question.
Thank you. Next will be Colleen Hazlett, and then we'll do another question from the viewers. Ms. Hazlett.
Okay. Ms. Hazlett, if you're talking, we can't hear you. It appears you're still muted.
Ms. Hazlett. Yeah, maybe we'll come back to her. Let me ask the next question, and then will be Jeanette Pimentel after this. Could you please briefly provide a Kids First overview? Is there a chance Kids First would be an option for all daycare, for all on daycare for kids? I'm so sorry. Daycare on days that kids are not in class.
Yeah, and that's we're happy to be able to share that we are expanding our Kids First program with the goal being that as a parent, you'll be able to select half day options. Like if, for example, if your kid is an AM person, you could have a PM option for a Kids First program, or vice versa. Or if your kid goes to school, if we get into a model where the students in school on part days on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then in a virtual mode, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'd be able to have a full day option Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and a half day option for Monday, Tuesday. They've worked hard to try to create that kind of flexibility. That information, again, is on our website and available for you to look at. We're also trying to, well, the intent is for students in full day to have staff work with students to help them complete their virtual assignments. Because remember, students are supposed to be learning for 4 hours, engaged in a learning process for 4 hours a day. That's one of the parameters. So there would be a period of time during the Kids First day where students will be working on Chromebooks and staff will be trying to assist them in that process. So that we're hoping that we're excited about being able to offer those components to Kids First, which is new. Did we get Colleen back? Did we figure out what happened to Colleen? Okay.
So next is going to be Jeanette Pimentel, and then we'll do another question from the group.
Are you there? Okay. I have 3 children going into 6th, 8th, and 11th grade. And my concern is, are you going to group them as by last name or by grades, like the 2 in middle school? My concern is the 3 different exposures of the 3 groups. And just wondering if like the 6th grade and the 8th grade, being that, if their last names, are you going to group them by alphabetical or by siblings or by grades? How is that working out?
So you would have to expect that all 3 of your students will be in 3 different cohorts of students. And at the secondary level, you have to expect that your student will be going through 6 different classes with 6 different groups of kids. I mean, we're not going to have, it's not possible to create a group of, say, 15 students and have them go through the same 6-period day at the middle or the high school. Your students would be in different cohorts by period with different groups of kids, which is why the safety protocols are critical. Wearing masks, all of that stuff, are cleaning and whatnot. So it's again, as a middle, you may have your student at the high school in 6 different cohorts, 1 per period, and your middle school student in 6 different cohorts, 1 per period, and you're actually, so and that would be true for your 6th grader and your 8th grader. And that's that is that's the way. There's no other way around that without dramatically increasing our staffing that we've been able to come up with anyway. And so that's where safety protocols come in. That's where, again, in the initial frameworks that we showed, there was a minimum of in-class time because we wanted to have as little inter-student contact as possible. We have to shift that now into a different way of looking at things because of the mandates we got from the state. One of the things we will try to do is if there's an AM/PM schedule, say, for example, your students in the middle school, to the degree that we can, we're going to try to keep siblings in the same grouping. So if your 6th grader is in an A schedule, we're going to try to keep your 8th grader in an A schedule. I can't promise that'll work all the time, but that is one of the things that we're going to try to do to help parents out. So you're not driving back and forth and all over the place with groups of students going to involved with different groupings. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, can I ask one more?
Sure.
In the event I have a positive, or a student comes out positive, or say one of my kids comes positive, and what happens then? Does the school shut down for 14 days for deep cleaning and everyone to quarantine? Who's notified initially? I mean, I'm going to let you guys know, let the school know, and then would you immediately tell all the kids to go home and then it's deep clean and quarantine? The risk of, I mean, there's obviously a high risk where we're putting the kids from social distancing to being in groups at a time where it's spiking. I mean, in that case, if someone does come positive, you still have to wait for, I mean, is there a plan immediately, or do you still have to wait for guidance from the health department to let you know what to do? Or do you immediately have a plan? Like if someone does come positive, everyone's alerted right away and then you wait?
Yeah, good question. Some of that information you're wondering about is in that document that was provided by the public health department. But the short of it is, if we had a concern about, legitimate information, like, okay, we know this student is positive and we just found out, the first thing we would probably do is send students home to the degree that we can that day. If you've ever tried to evacuate a school, like just take James Logan with 3,000 kids, trying to, in the middle of the day, close a school and send kids home is a challenge. But that's probably what we would do in that scenario to start with. But then really what happens next is not something that we decide. It's something that we are either told to do by the public health department, or we do that in collaboration with the Alameda County Public Health Department. So that next step is, it really depends. And, both, I mean, obviously, if we find out somebody's tested positive, our first phone call before we do anything is the public health department. And, if there's any kind of then this is true for anything. If we had concern about, some type of other health issue or threat to our students that would, like a gas leak, we send kids home and we figure it out. And then we make sure the school's safe when we bring them back. So that same protocol and practice is in place now, and it will be in place in the fall, with the added twist that this is something that we will work with the public health department on. But we would do that anyway if there was a threat to public health, a threat to our students' health. That's the way it, believe it or not, that's the way it's kind of always actually worked. There is more information, specific information that you can find in that document provided by the health department as well, that on our website. Okay, so the next question.
So this one's from Mina, and it's regarding students with disabilities. What extra help will students with disabilities receive?
Okay. Well, again, it kind of depends on where the student, what those needs are. For example, if it's a student in an SDC class, we're hoping to be able to have as much in classroom time as possible with paraeducators and all that normal support. If the student is on the mild to moderate side of things, that support might come in the way of additional support from, say, a resource teacher, paraeducator, that type of thing. It really depends. There's a full spectrum of needs that our kids have, from really severe to very mild, and the support really varies. Our goal is to, now that we have had some time to try to figure some of this out, is to make that support as robust as possible within the parameters that we're working with. Very general answer, but it's hard to give something more specific without knowing where the needs are on the spectrum of needs.
Great. So the next person will be Lisa Lindert. Oh, the next person will be Colleen Hazlett, and then we'll do Miss Lindert. Miss Hazlett?
Yeah, can you hear me this time? Yes. Yeah, okay. So I actually have a couple of questions, and then one is more of a comment about the specialist, what's happening with them. My first question is, do all the school sites have the water fountains that have the ability to only fill up water bottles? Because if you've ever seen elementary kids use a drinking fountain, it's all about, they put their mouth over the whole water fountain, and obviously there's going to be a lot of germs passed that way. And so if every school site had those fountains where they just fill up water bottles and we don't allow students to use the drinking fountains, I think that would help a lot. My other question is about teachers. What is being done to ensure their safety? Who's providing masks for teachers? Are teachers expected to buy their own? Are the school sites going to have them? Will the district provide them? Is there a certain level of masks that we're going to be required to have to use? As far as cleaning supplies, who's responsible for all of that at the end of the day? And then my comment, not really a question about, well, maybe there's a question about specialists, is PE is the only subject that has a required number of minutes by the state. And I'm not sure why, I haven't read the documents yet. It has been excluded from this coming year's hybrid. But it should be known that there is a huge amount of inequity when students are doing their prep activities at home. I could say, as being a PE teacher for elementary this last year, I didn't know if a kid had access to a ball. I didn't know if a kid had access to a jump rope. I didn't even know if students have access to an area to play outside. Where some students may have all of that and may have all of the equipment, and other students have nothing and don't have an adult or older sibling that can help supervise them outside for activities. So when considering what to do with the prep specialist, that should be taken in consideration, because I'm sure science is the same way. Music is probably very similar. It's inequitable as far as what resources students have at home. Thanks.
Yep, that's definitely, I think I've got your areas here. So fillable water stations, that's something we'll have to look into. I know most of our sites have them. Certainly using drinking fountains the way that we've used them in the past is not going to be something that's going to be okay. We'll have to check on that and get back to you. Thanks for calling that to our attention. That's something that we will definitely need to think about as we move forward. In terms of protection for teachers, we're actually really lucky. Gavin Newsom said that he was going to deliver PPE to all school districts across the state. And when I heard him say that, my first thought was, wow, I'd place a lot of money on a bet that he's not able to pull that off, and I would have lost my money. He delivered enough PPE for all students in our district, all staff in our district, for 60 days. And I didn't believe it until they backed the trucks up into our loading dock and dropped off that equipment. So we have cloth masks, face masks for staff. We've got a cleaning product enough for all of our schools and all of our students and all of our staff already. We weren't waiting around for that. So separately, we were prepared. We ordered our own PPE and our own cleaning supplies. So we actually have, because I didn't believe for a second that we would get the support we needed from the state. And I didn't want that to be a limiting factor for us when we opened our schools. So we were actually really well positioned with the general PPE equipment that's being recommended and required by our public health department. So that's good news there. And then as far as PE and specialists go, I don't know why they excluded PE minutes from the required minutes. We have specialists, we have outstanding PE program in our district, and our goal is to the degree that we can to keep that integrated into our programming for our students next year, recognizing fully that amongst other inequities, access to even the outdoors really varies from student to student in terms of what they can physically do, and that's unfortunately a major factor when it comes to not only PE but a lot of other areas as well. So I think I addressed that.
Thank you. And so we'll have Lisa Lindert be next, and then I'll take another question from the viewers. Ms. Lindert.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so I got disconnected earlier when I tried to turn on the mic, so just a little troubleshooting that here myself as a parent is having, and I sympathize with our kids during this time because it's just as hard, if not harder, for them to troubleshoot. Hello? Hello?
I'm sorry, I think a wrong button was hit. We're going to let Ms. Miller go, and then we'll have Ms. Lindert go. Our apologies.
Okay, so let me just jump right in. I have a student that's going to be starting 5th grade and a student that will be starting 2nd grade. And I know you keep referring, Dr. Thompson, to the Alameda County Public Health recommendations as the guidelines moving forward. And I'm just kind of curious, if those are the guidelines that everybody in the county should be following, then how come all the school districts aren't on the same board as to what is going to happen this fall? And my other question is, you did kind of state that, the Kids First program will be more robust. There's going to have to be some virtual learning taking place, since that will be the requirement, especially maybe in that full day program. But how will that work? Are they expected to bring their own devices? Will they be supplied devices to do the virtual learning? And I know my children have been in the Kids First program, which is a great program, but thus far it's only just been strictly childcare, and they're very outnumbered if it were to come to expect them to do any kind of education with the children. And then just a comment I wanted to make is that, there was research coming out that virtual learning is not up to the standards of what the children should be learning or are expected to learn and know. And also the American Academy of Pediatrics says that more in classroom time is better for the children's mental health and education in general.
Okay, thank you. So you've hit on several of the biggest challenges that we face as educators in trying to run a school district in this time, such as, why is it that we have one set of guiding documents for all Alameda County schools, but we all have different plans? And that is the reality of our situation. So I'm just happy we finally have one set of guidelines that we can all look to to build our plans around, because before they produced that document, we were looking at 3 different documents, one from the CTC, one from the CDE, another one from these statements that kept coming out from the public health department. So believe it or not, this is a huge step forward. And I communicate with all the superintendents in Alameda County every other week or more. And the decision on how we operate is kind of like any other decision made in any school district, which is, we might choose to adopt one curriculum here, but even though the standards are the same, Fremont may choose a whole different set of documents. They may choose a different instructional day than we have. They may offer other programs that we don't. We may offer programs that they do. that is the nature of the way all school districts work. So we are all grappling with how to take the guidance that we have and create plans that work for our districts. We're sharing our plans, we're talking amongst ourselves, but the reality is they're probably all going to be different, because the local communities within our school districts are going to be the ones making those decisions. And that's the way it is. That's the way, believe it or not, that's the way it is for everything that we do. And this is no different than that. So at Kids First, I really want to set clear expectations about Kids First. And I think I might have misled people. I don't want to do that. Kids First will attempt to help students with their virtual learning. They are not teachers. They are not educators. Students, if they bring their own Chromebook and they choose to use some of that time, they'll be given an opportunity to have time to start their virtual learning there, and they'll be doing it on their own with some help from the Kids First staff. But you're right, they are not going to be sitting there side by side with your child, helping them in their virtual learning mode. If you enroll your student in a Kids First virtual learning day, the 4 hours a day they're supposed to be getting, some of that is going to happen outside of the Kids First day. That's just the reality of it, because we don't have certificated teachers in with Kids First, the Kids First program, guiding that instruction. So to the degree students are able to work independently and with their own Chromebook in that setting, because we don't have enough Chromebooks to provide to have a whole separate set for Kids First. To the degree that they can do that, they'll be able to work towards that 4 hour goal of having 4 hours of instruction, if it's fully virtual, 4 hours of virtual instruction that day. So that'll be, I don't want to set an unrealistic expectation about what happens in Kids First, because like I said, it's not an educational program, it is a daycare program. So, and certainly we see that there are lots of people telling us what we should do and what's best for kids. We get that all the time. The Pediatric Association is one of them. I agree with them. I think the most in-class time you can have is the best. It certainly would be the best for my kids, I can tell you that. But they aren't setting the guidelines through the Alameda County Public Health Department. They aren't at the state government level tying funding to how we run our programs, and they aren't involved with local decisions. So I get it. They're one example of how I totally agree with what they're putting out. But there are a lot of people that have opinions about that. We have to focus on using the guiding documents that we're required to use. And that's, for us, the Alameda County Public Health Department document, the state guidelines, and our local decision-making process based on this input. So that's how that works.
Thank you. Now this time, Ms. Lender, we're really going to try to hear you.
Hi, I wanted to thank everybody here for all their work on this, because I know that this has been a tremendous amount of effort on your part. My background is in education, and I've actually taught online high school for 2 years, so I understand the challenges of teaching children online, and I understand that it's not always for everybody. I have a son who is a kindergartner. He will be starting kindergarten this year, and my concern here is that, I know it's challenging at a high school level, and I've tried to enroll him in some online learning during this past year, and it just doesn't work for a kindergartner. And so I'd like to understand a little bit better, like, how does online instruction work with that age group? And is it possible to adjust, the efforts of the school district so that we do allow the little kids, the ones that have a little bit of trouble? Like my son here is sitting here tonight, can't sit still to have us listening. We have to keep, occupying him. So how do we do that? How do we navigate that for our small children who need that learning and, can't sit in front of a computer maybe like their older children can? And is there a way to create something that's not necessarily one size fits all grade levels? So that was my first comment on that. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Right, and I'm smiling because anybody that's had children, or I've taught kindergarten for a little while, and I can tell you that I can't imagine trying to manage that online. Our teachers are amazing that have done that so far. But your points, one of the things that we can, and what you're really asking us to do is consider, it sounds like, is to consider allowing, and we have TK is even more challenging, of course, because of those, you have 4-year-olds now and younger students. So for TKK and our younger kids, looking at a way that we could have those groups come more in class, perhaps, and other grade levels perhaps less, if that's a choice we have to make. That is something that that's a really good thought and comment, something we've talked about and thought about, and certainly can take into consideration as we're revising our programs moving forward. The online program that we're offering, so for example, our Personalized Learning Academy, it does have a TK and a K option. There is a teacher guiding the process, and that program is set up for students who can engage with a teacher leading the guide for some time, but then is really a strong independent worker. And so independent worker and in kindergarten, those are, even your best independent workers require time. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, for the parents of our younger students. Hang on one second here. I'm it was pointed out to me that we're using the Acellus online program for our kindergarten classroom. Our kindergarten online program, and again, I'm talking about our Personalized Learning Academy. The TK curriculum is going to, they don't have that through the online program, and that's something that we'll be developing on our own. So, but that's not applicable to you because you have a K student, but that's something that will be important for TK folks to know when they're engaging, if they're interested in that program. In a hybrid mode or a full virtual mode, if you're not in the Personalized Learning Academy, but in a school program, the resource, the support that the classroom teacher that your student is with is going to be critical in helping that move forward. And I agree with you. I think the more time you have with your students actually in front of the teacher at the younger grades, the more productive that learning is. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. The challenge is, how do we make all of that come together? But we will take your comment into consideration moving forward, and if there's a way to increase that time, and that's something that we'll definitely look at.
Thank you. We'll take one more question from the field, and then I think we'll have time for one more speaker. The next speaker would be Eileen Alcunes after this. This question is regarding the hybrid option. We would like to register for a hybrid option so we don't lose our place at the school our kids are currently enrolled in. What happens if we register for a hybrid option and our kids don't attend the in-class part and just do the virtual part? However, we will make sure they work on everything that happens in class.
Okay, so, and this kind of gets to if you enroll in the Personalized Learning Academy, which is the 100% online program, how is that different than you're staying at your school? So to be clear, you don't have to enroll in a hybrid option. If you keep your student enrolled in the school they're currently enrolled in, then you will get whatever is offered at that school. And like I shared earlier, I think all parents should be prepared to have their students either 100% virtual, in a hybrid where there's some in classroom and some virtual, or 100% in school all day. Because I right now, I think it's probably likely that students enrolled in our regular school programs will be in all three of those scenarios. So if you are enrolled in the Personalized Learning Academy, that is, you'll be in that school and you'll stay there unless you select to try to transfer out, and you'll be subject to all the normal transfer processes that we have to transfer out. What I think you may be asking is, if I'm in my normal school and they're in the hybrid mode, or fully, let's just use that as an example because that's the one that was brought up. And what happens if I don't send my kid to school on the days when the student is supposed to be in class? Well, one of the requirements we have, the attendance requirements, is that we track whether students are present or not. And present or not means, if you are involved in the virtual mode, are you engaging in that process? If you're supposed to be in a seat in a classroom and you're not there, it'll be treated like an absence. And if you continue to not show up, you'll go through the normal absence. You'll get phone calls home. It's called the SAR process, and you'll get letters saying, "Hey, your student's not coming to school." So you'll be expected to be there if your student is enrolled in our regular school sites. You'll be expected to be engaged and attending whatever format that is in, either fully there in a hybrid mode or in a full virtual mode.
Great. And I think we'll probably, given our time, the last person is Eileen Alcones.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me? All right. So I am a parent who, and, I completely understand, bringing the kids back to school and, that lack of, instruction, that lack of being around people. But let's be honest here, right? We're in a pandemic. And this is something that many parents, and listening to a lot of the questions that are being asked and being addressed, it's clearly about the virtual. It's hard, but what's harder, having a child that's sick, and then you have parents at home who are sick that can't care for their children, or people who have grandparents at home that now could also be sick. So my question is, I look at all of the documents that you had sent out and what's also being given by Alameda County, and just everything that the health care and all of that is suggesting. But I mean, how can we really, with everything that happened with the strike, and how you guys had mentioned the budgeting and all of that, what's the reality of really being able to afford in this district to keep health standards high? And also, are there going to be screenings? Like, are the parents are going to have a document sent to us about what it is that you guys intend to do to ensure that as the kids are going to school, or as the teachers are going to school, that they're being screened as well? I mean, there's a lot of, it's just being a parent and considering my kindergartner keeping his mask on and policing that. As a parent, it's hard for me to even have him do that. So to rely on somebody at school to do that for him, that's scary for me, because I haven't even let my kids out of the house. So, it's just, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I just feel like having this plan, I don't see anything around that at all. I just see that there's a whole lot of, this is what we're going to do with group A and group B and face coverings and this and that. But maybe that'll work in a high school setting, but in an elementary school setting, I can't see that working. And I can't see the kids not cross-contaminating and doing all of that.
So thank you, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah, and I totally, you're concerned. This is we're all in this together, both as parents, as educators, as students, as community members, and everything you said these are all concerns we all have as well. As far as the safety protocols in our schools, we will definitely comply with the county guidelines that you see, but that's only the frame that we use when we are creating the bigger pictures that you're referring to, like the instructional models that we've shared. The reality is that the hard work comes when school starts, which is if you're a kindergarten teacher and you have, two groups of kids, you have your A group and your B group, and you've got 12 kids in group A. Can you reasonably train the students to keep their masks on all day and to maintain social distancing and follow hand washing protocols and all of that? And that'll be our challenge. And I have faith that our students and our staff will be able to create those protocols and those guidelines. We do it all the time. If you've ever watched a kindergarten class work, and I use kindergarten a lot as an example because a well-run kindergarten class is a finely tuned operation. And those kids, if you ever go in there and as a substitute teacher, for example, and you try to change the routine, good luck with that. They know it, they follow it, they move along with it. There's a system for it. And that's probably the best example I can think of in the TK-12 level of how that really can work and be made operational. So yes, is there going to be a kid that pulls his mask off? I'm sure. And, we deal with that just like we do in any other situation for a student that has a rules infraction. Granted, we're talking about public health and safety here. It's not just like a kid not standing in line to go to lunch. the consequences are different. The seriousness is at a much higher level, and which is why having the group A and the group B is going to allow us to make our plans more operationally feasible. And so once we get our models in place, that's why I'm really pushing to get this done to the degree we can and make a decision, if it's possible, by our next board meeting, because that'll be the 14th of July. And then we have 1 month to really work through all of those procedural details. So when our teachers come back, those are clear, that we can make them clear to parents, and then we can put them in place from day one and be ready to roll. So it's a significant challenge, but I think it's doable with the information we have right now. And we're going to continue moving forward that way to make sure everything is as efficient as it can be. There are no promises when it comes to this stuff. There's no guarantees when it comes to sending your kid to school. I mean, your kid could trip and fall down on the playground and hurt themselves. In any normal situation, someone may sneeze on that may come to school with the flu and sneeze on your student, and then your student gets the flu. That happened all the time, every day. Obviously, the level of awareness and the level of structure is exponentially higher than it ever has been, which is, I think, what's going to allow us to really make this operational as we move forward, and make make the safety protocols in place something that even a kindergartner can follow. But you've outlined our challenge, and it's a real one, and it's something that we'll be working on up until the day school opens and straight on through until this crisis is behind us. So with that, we are out of time. I want to again reiterate that we knew going in with the number of people registered that it wasn't possible to have everybody speak without going into the wee hours of the morning. So I want to remind everybody that there is that survey link on our webpage. When you go to the spotlight section, go to the town hall meeting section, and you'll see that survey link. We look at that data. We use that data. I shared some of it with you up until basically I stopped at 3 o'clock yesterday to tabulate that. We'll take everything from 3 o'clock on yesterday moving forward, and we'll continue to compile that so you can share your comments, your questions, and your concerns through that. And I apologize again for one of the things I think it was a parent sharing that the mute button, trying to get that right on a Zoom. We are all learning at a rate. I don't think I've learned more in the last 10 years than I've learned in the last 3 months about how to make this work. It's exciting, it's scary, but at the same time, we're working through it and we're getting through it, and we'll continue to do that. So please provide us with your comments. We are going to take them. We are going to use them to sit down with our teacher collaborators to try to come up with some new plans with the new guidelines. We'll share them out, and if we need to keep revising them, we will. If we need to have another town hall meeting, we will. But we'll continue to move forward. My goal throughout all of this is to give you everything that we have, that we're using to make a decision, to share it with you. And again, but the budget was approved on Monday, but signed by the governor. Tuesday, we got a legal opinion on what it means, and you have that legal opinion, the same one we're using. It's available for you to see. The public health guidelines are the same way. We will continue to share everything we have. We'll take all of the comments and questions that you have and put it into a format that you can see a summary of that too, so you get an idea of what everybody's sharing. And we're going to use that. So again, long way of saying, please continue to share your questions, comments, concerns, and know that we're going to do the best we can do to take that into consideration and to make school as functional, as operational, and as safe as it can possibly be in the fall, even though we don't know exactly what that's going to look like right now. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for participating. I can't tell you how heartened I was to see the number of people tuned in to watch this, because these are our kids, and their safety and our related safety at the family and the staff and community level is there's nothing more important than that. So thank you all for attending. Stay tuned, more to come, and we'll try to share things as quickly as we can and as thoroughly as we can moving forward. So with that, I think we are done. Thank you again, and I hope we engage soon in one way or the other. Good night.